Thank you, Mr. President. Special Envoy Pedersen has conveyed the precarity of the moment, and I want to reinforce that message and add 4 points. First, as the situation in Asweda reminds us, the humanitarian crisis is not over. Across Syria, 16 million Syrians still need humanitarian support. While, as you heard, the ceasefire in Asweda has largely held, sporadic clashes continue. Alarming reports of abuses during the earlier fighting continue to emerge. More than 185,000 people have been displaced across Asweda, Dara, rural Damascus, and beyond. This week, our teams have visited Asweda city, Salkad towns, and the western countryside of the governorate. They delivered aid and assessed needs. The overall situation is, I'm afraid, dire. We need to sustain urgent delivery of food, health, shelter, clean water, fuel, restoration of water and electricity infrastructure, education. In some areas, those arriving now outnumber the existing population. Services are overwhelmed. We're in close contact with the Syrian authorities and coordinating with the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, who have delivered 12 convoys of essential aid, and NGO partners. We have provided emergency food packages, flour, essential household items to tens of thousands of people, including displaced families. Medical kits are reaching key hospitals in Asweda and Dara, while medical teams are providing health and nutrition services. And UNICEF is working with partners to provide bottled water, water trucking, and fuel for water pumping. The Syrian Arab Red Crescent has also facilitated a commercial convoy with key supplies and worked with the Syrian civil defense to transport vulnerable people, including those who wish to return to Asweda. But insecurity and road closures have disrupted commercial supply. Road access is still limited to 2 routes in, through Basra al-Sham and Bursa al-Harir in Dara. Other routes, including the main highway from Damascus, remain closed. So, we need better humanitarian and commercial access, and most of all, we need safety. 8 convoys have come under fire this month. There have been attacks on health facilities, medics, ambulances. We continue working closely with the Syrian authorities and partners to strengthen channels for help. And I insist again, as I know that you will, on the protection and freedom of movement of civilians, humanitarian workers, and medical missions. Mr. President, my second point. Despite funding and security challenges, the UN and partners are delivering as much life-saving support as we can with the resources we have. In Syria, as elsewhere, as we implement the humanitarian reset, we are now implementing a hyper-prioritized plan, and we've restructured and streamlined our humanitarian coordination effort in country, including reducing senior roles. We are reaching almost 3.5 million people on average every month across Syria, from Latakia to Aleppo to Hasakeh. That is a noticeable increase from last year, despite less funding. Since December last year, we've scaled up across the humanitarian response. Nutrition for children under 5 who are stunted, subsidized bread to 2 million people every day. We're working with the authorities to rebuild critical services. The Ministry of Health with WHO and UNICEF are delivering a new national immunization strategy and rehabilitating hospitals and health facilities. Partners are rebuilding water stations, wells, laboratories, sewer networks. They continue to provide essential services in Al-Hol camp and to support families leaving the camp. And UNHCR has been in discussions on assuming camp management activities. OCHA's country-based pool funds are now providing $75 million to support vulnerable people across the country. We've made some progress on NGO registration and visas for aid workers, but more is needed. I have agreed with the interim authorities the extension of cross-border operations from Turkey as we move towards importing more humanitarian supplies commercially. The Lebanese and Jordanian crossings are open and functioning well, with work towards 24-hour access. But And this is, of course, my third point. Without more funding, we won't be able to sustain these vital efforts, let alone expand them to more people who need them. The humanitarian appeal for 2025 is only 14% funded. Aid cuts are projected to lead to staffing cuts of at least 40% across the humanitarian community in Syria, with NGOs hit hardest. 16% of health facilities have suspended or reduced capacity due to the cuts. So, I want to thank all donors who have generously supported the humanitarian response, led at the moment by the EU, Germany, and Canada. And I want to call on all donors to keep supporting Syria and to disperse the generous pledges made at the Brussels conference back in March. Funding cuts are affecting our operations everywhere, of course. But among our 10 large country appeals, it is the Syria appeal that's the lowest figure. And this is despite these hyper-prioritized plans having reduced the overall ask by nearly $1 billion compared to last year. With more resources, or even the funding that has been repeatedly promised, we can get critical medicine to 1 million more people each month. We can restore water services for an additional 5 million people. We can expand services for people returning to their home areas. We have also worked with partners and in consultation with the interim government to develop a plan to respond to the severe drought-like conditions that Syria is facing. As part of our broader appeal for critical support for food, agriculture, clean water, and health services to 4.3 million people who are most affected. This is, I'm afraid, the worst drought in over 3 decades and an ominous indicator of needs to come. Alongside funding, we also welcome the easing of sanctions by the US, EU, and UK, which opens up potential for vital investment and could reduce humanitarian needs. But the impact of that will take time. Complex legal environment that still continues for humanitarians continues to impede our work. Humanitarian carve-outs help, so I hope that we can extend those exemptions. Finally, Mr. President, while we surge humanitarian support, we need investment in longer-term support for the development and reconstruction. Will allow the people of Syria to reduce and ultimately end reliance on humanitarian aid. So I also strongly welcome the diplomatic progress made by Jordan, Turkey, the United States, France, countries from the region, and the Syrian authorities. This is a firm foundation for a much-needed shift from a humanitarian-led approach to a stronger development trajectory. The Syrian people do not want to depend on humanitarian help. So announcements of new investments in infrastructure and energy supply are encouraging, not just in their own right, but also as a signal of confidence from the region and beyond. The international community must help translate this momentum into tangible improvements in people's lives by delivering on those planned projects, by taking additional concrete steps on sanction relief and investing in infrastructure. Such initiatives and investments are essential as more than 2 million Syrian refugees and internally displaced people have returned home since December last year. Let me amplify again the call from my colleague Filippo Grandi, High Commissioner for Refugees, following his mission to Syria 2 months ago, where he asked for more support for those coming back. As he said, returns will prove short-lived without increased international support. Mr. President, the international community and this Council has been clear that we must shift the momentum away from the years of hardship and destruction towards recovery and hope. That means sustained commitment, patient diplomacy, and a relentless focus on delivery and implementation. The people of Syria do not need us to be commentators and problem observers. They need us to move with genuine urgency, generosity, and purpose. The humanitarian community has shown that we can deliver. With funding and access, we aim to no longer be needed. Please back us. So, my asks, political action to hold the peace in Asweda and prevent future escalations of this kind. Support for our funding and access requests, and to help us create the conditions, including through investment and sanctions lift, where the humanitarian mission transition to genuine, Syrian-led recovery and rebuilding. We need to do that for the Syrian people, yes, but not just for Syria. This is a chance to demonstrate that international solidarity still matters and that coordinated international action still works. Thank you, Mr. President.